What about processing speed? I mean, were you able to get a sense of that rookie season?
Yeah, I was in terms of that offense for sure. I think any going young quarterback is going to have a little tough time, getting into a process the entire season, and getting the ball quickly out. But when you see a young guy do that week 1, week 2, week 3, and have success early on, that's kind of like, whoa, okay, that's pretty cool. So I would say the expectation when you put the guy out there to be the starter is to do things the right way. And I think Mac was able to show that throughout practice, similar way Brock was here, to instill the confidence in the coaches to put him out there on game day. Because that's, at the end of the day, when you put a guy out there on the center, you want to have that confidence that you're going to score points. And I think when you're a young quarterback and can prove that in practice and then take it to the game, that's a huge thing.
How have you seen Brock and Mac work together and potentially learn from each other?
Oh, yeah, they've been great. The whole quarterback room, Tanner, Curtis, Brock, Mac, it's a tight knit group. It's pretty cool. I know Brock and Mac worked out in Jacksonville before in the past, and they have a previous relationship, which is awesome. And I think it's important. Those guys spend a lot of time with each other, and I think they bounce ideas off of one another, whether it's footwork and, hey, we're going to do this way, or hey, let's watch this tape together. The relationship's been cool, really neat to watch back and forth, and they're definitely different guys. They're all different. Tanner's different. Curtis is different. But when they get in that room, they're all the same. They're trying to play quarterback for 49ers. And, we joke around a lot and have some fun. I think they think I'm funny. I don't think they probably don't think that. But no, the relationship's been great, and it's getting stronger every day.
This might sound like an asshole question. It's not meant to be.
Don't worry.
Just from an ass.
Yeah. Aren't you excited to hear this? But when you come into a room, I realize you've done this a long time now. And built up respect around the league. But when you come into a quarterback's room, you've never been the primary.
Sure.
Quarterback
Yeah. No.
coach,
Totally.
And you've never you can't say look at my playing experience.
Yeah. No doubt.
So how do you build trust and credibility with those guys? Because so many quarterbacks say, unless you've done this in the NFL and can understand just how hard it is, no one really gets it. So
No.
how do you?
It's a great question. And, as a young coach who didn't play in the NFL, you always battle that. You battle that. How am I going to earn this player's trust and respect? I think at the end of the day, you have to do two things. And you have to go in there and you have to say, okay, how can I make this player better? Okay, and how are they going to believe and make it better? I think the biggest thing you can do is you have to be honest with them. And I think if you're honest with the player, instead of just being the player's friend, and you're trying to hold that player to a standard, I think they'll respect you. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're being honest with them, and they have to have some backup and credibility to that. And that credibility doesn't come from just playing it. It comes from film study. It comes from, hey, this is my knowledge on this play and why it's going to work. And if you can explain that in the right way with some good energy and good positivity and some good coaching points, once you do that, I think that can go a long way. I've been blessed in my career being able to do that with players like Tom, Josh McCown, Julian Edelman, players much older than me, and I haven't played quarterback or receiver in the league, and they've held me to say, when I go in that room, I better not make sure I make a fool of myself. And how can I do that? I got to be prepared. I got to be honest with them, and I got to show them I'm not scared to coach them. And I think that's the biggest thing you can do.
You mentioned confidence.
Yeah.
When did you feel like you kind of gained that confidence of I'm going to show them rather than I hope they don't think I'm whatever?
That's a great question. I'm not sure when that clicked or when that does click for any young coach. Whenever you say you're ready, I don't think you are ready. You're not ready to become a position coach. You're not ready to become a coordinator. But I think it just comes with time. I think it just comes with time and years of breaking down games and years of doing the ranks the right way. And I think any young coach who's trying to rise the ranks fast, and look, I've been blessed to kind of have that success, or I guess not success, but chance to do that. But, there were 7 years where I broke down games, and I was able to learn different offenses and learn different systems and see different head coaches do things. And you can either take that as a negative or you can look at it as a positive and say, I'm going to make sure that when my time comes, I'm going to be ready to go. And, I think that's the biggest thing you can do as a young coach and gain that confidence, if you will. See things done the right way and see things done not the right way.
Sorry, last one.
Sure.
But were you ever worried I'm going to be in my 12th year breaking down games?
Yeah, I
When
think I think you always do that. I think you always get in that mode. You never know when that's going to happen. It's like any job you have. When you never know when you're going to be able to take the next step, and you just kind of got to work hard. When it comes, it comes. And when it comes, you got to take advantage of it. And that's the best thing you can do. And really no secrets to it. It's just keep grinding, and hard work's going to pay off. That's kind of the end of my statement on that.
Nick, what's the next step for Brock, and
Mm-hmm.
how can you help him get to whatever that next step is?
Yeah, the next step for Brock, I think I was asked this question earlier, but I think just overall, just taking it day by day, and not trying to win the year, not trying to win the game. That's in September, but trying to win the meeting, trying to win the practice, and taking every single little rep and saying, okay, how can I make sure this little rep's good? How can I make sure that I can learn from this little rep, and moving forward from there? And that's a very cliche statement to say, Matt, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, that's really what it is. He's got to take it one step at a time, as opposed to 5 steps all at once. If you try and tackle 5 things, you're not going to accomplish none of them. So how can we accomplish one thing today and then accomplish the next thing tomorrow?
Do you think that because of injuries and just the circumstances of the year, maybe he got a little bit outside of himself last year and tried to do too much?
I don't. I can't speak really much to last year in terms of his quarterback play because I wasn't coaching him, but I can tell you that any quarterback that doesn't play up to the level that they're used to playing, there are certain factors of that, whether it's turning the ball over, not finding completions on time, and that just goes for any quarterback. And there's a lot of factors that go into that by scheme, by week, injury, whatnot, all that kind of stuff. So there are a lot of factors that come into play in that. But how can you? I tell those quarterbacks all the time, it's an imperfect game played by imperfect people. So how can you maximize your time now to minimize your mistakes later? And I think that's what we're trying to do right now, and hopefully that's what we can do this fall.
As I recall, you were in the mix here in 2017 for the job, right?
I think there's so many experiences, and coming out of the Jacksonville situation. So that's where Robert and I had a lot of conversations, and you talked to a lot of people at that time.
Can you rewind back 12, 13 years? I know Robert came to Jacksonville after Seattle.
Yes.
But what was the process like identifying Robert as a big coaching talent?
Well, so we were together in Seattle. He was our quality control coach and had a lot of respect for him. And then when I got the job in Jacksonville, Mark Duffner was the linebacker coach. And so we decided after going through the interview process that he was going to be our linebacker coach. And then I think the next year he went with Joe Philbin. So there's always a plan somehow to get Robert with us. In what capacity, we didn't know. And then when it opened up to get him in as a linebacker coach, that's when we took advantage of it.
Your foundation, is from cover 3, but Robert sort of evolved more of a quarter system. I think a lot of the league has done that. Well, why do you think the league has sort of moved in that direction?
Well, I think it is part of the philosophy. I think that's why it's so exciting for me to come here and said, hey, we've done a lot of 3. He's played quite a bit of 3. We play some split safety, but just incorporating it all into a big picture. And, I think through all of his experiences, right? I mean, who he was as a quality control coach to now, the experiences he had, same with me. I think just to blend that together. And we've been on the same page for many years, but through times, you kind of evolved to different things. So, that's where I've seen him grow in that area as well.
What do you see as your role being right now? How do you define it?
Well, it's, right now in the conversations with Robert, it's just coming in here and then, like I said, being excited about seeing this and seeing how Kyle operates, seeing how the defense operates, and then just being a sounding board. And we do a lot of communicating and, so it's just really I think the number one job of assistant coach is to serve the head coach, serve the coaches, and then make sure or help players serve each other. So really that's my role now. That's kind of been my philosophy throughout my career, and it'll just continue here.
When you look at, the experiences you've had, that Robert's had, what is it, how big of an asset is it to be a former head coach in the NFL and then go to an assistant role and kind of have that wisdom that goes
right.
With that?
Well, and I think this is where I give Robert a lot of credit. I think sometimes when you're a coordinator and then you become a head coach, the responsibilities of the head coach, you somewhat get a little bit more concentrated on that than maybe on defense, which he hasn't. In my meetings with him and stuff, he's done an amazing job how he is staying in tune not only to the head coaching responsibilities, but has a really good feel of, where the league's at, what's going on in the league defensively. And that's really hard to do, really hard to do. So I give him a lot of credit. He has always been really sharp, but I think, that wisdom has come into play a little bit more because of his experiences now.
Do you guys pick up where you left off? It's been 9 years, I guess, you and Robert since you're together.
Yeah, I think we've always had a great relationship. And, I think when you come into a situation like this, it's, trust is so important. And we've known each other for so long that I think he knows that. For me, there's no personal agenda. I think everybody has an agenda. You want to help the team be successful. That's an agenda. You want to do whatever you can to help the organization. There's an agenda there. But I think we know each other well enough that we know it's really not a personal agenda. It's really just to be here and add, our little piece or add my little piece and whatever I can do to help the organization. So I think that's what the relationship part of it is good. We're going to challenge one another and, hopefully get to the right spot.
What's the challenge that you guys face? 5 draft picks, the first 5 draft picks, all defensive guys. There's not a whole lot of grace period there. I mean, those guys have to step in and contribute right away. So what is that put on the shoulders of you guys on the defensive
Well,
side?
that's probably more of a question for Robert, as a defense coordinator when it comes to personnel, things like that. But I think for us, we're just excited to work. I'm speaking for myself, just excited to work with all of them. Whether it's the veteran players, the rookies, and you see, there's some talented players out there, both young and experienced. And so to have the opportunity to work with them and see where this thing grows with the really good staff that we have defensively, that's the part that's exciting. Where it'll all end, and when it's all said and done, that's a conversation for Kyle and Robert, John Lynch, and those guys to have.
Chris, what do you see about as far as the evolution of Huff? He came into the league undrafted. He didn't produce a lot early. He's produced a lot over the last 3 years for the most part, if you look at the pressure rates.
Yeah, just a self-made man in the NFL. Anytime an undrafted rookie, works and grinds his way through and then, makes the team and then becomes a productive player within a scheme and then becomes a double-digit type sacker in the NFL. It's a self-made man. There's a lot of hard work behind the scenes that goes into it because, undrafted guys are a little bit behind the 8 ball. From the start, just as far as just making the team and then to really excel within a role and then to really truly carve out a role and become one of the, the top players as far as some of the get-off metrics and some of the pressure metrics. And then, his last year there with the Jets, the sack production followed it all. He's a self-made man. It's a lot of hard work that went in behind the scenes to get to that point.
You got a lot of snaps last year from Evan Anderson. What kind of offseason has he had so far, and what are you expecting out of him in his second season?
Yeah, he's came in last year as an undrafted rookie and grinded and ended up carving himself a role there, starting probably about game 5. Started mixing him into the rotation, and then by the end of the year with the injuries, ended up carving himself out of a pretty significant role this offseason. Just wanted him to get back here early as he could. As a young player, get with our strength staff as early as he could, continue to change his body into, the type of body that he sees himself playing at and the type that we want. And just hard work, get in the weight room, build good habits in there, good habits with his diet, and then, come in and once we get with him in phase 1 and phase 2, just really the work ethic of the technique and pad level and the leverage in the blocks, and he's done a really good job this offseason. I think he's taken a jump, so you would anticipate, him coming in as an undrafted guy and carving out a role. Going into his second year is kind of where, in this scheme, you guys really start getting a good feel for exactly what we want done, and you should see a jump in his play.
With him, West, and Collins, guys who have size and quickness, how do you decide which of the 2 defensive tackle spots they play?
Repetition, and when we're looking at them in in an evaluation setting, you kind of get a sense, hey, is this guy more of a 3 technique? Is this guy more of a A-gap player playing down as a 2-eye and a shade? And but with the way offenses are nowadays and the way they can manipulate the fronts and make us slide the fronts, you have to have the versatility to play both. 3 technique, 2-eye, playing the B-gap, playing the A-gap. Some guys are more built for the A-gap, and the longer, maybe Longer players are a little bit more suited to play the 3 technique, but they've got to be able to play both. They've got to be interchangeable. We do have certain spots envisioned, but quickly they could go from one to the next before the snap of the football, and they got to be able to execute at both.
Have you been able to see much from Alfred Collins yet?
From a meeting room standpoint, yes, just, how, football knowledge, the way he picks up things, how quickly he can pick up things, and, day-to-day retention, things like that. On the field, not as much. He's still grinding through with the training staff and getting ready to, hit the field with us. So just more from a meeting room standpoint, and then just the evaluation process going into it.
Kris, last year you guys picked up Aquinu 2 years ago and then played him last year. This last year you signed Teron Jackson in December. A buddy of mine recruited him to Coastal Carolina. Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year once upon a time. What do you see with Jackson? Does he have a shot this summer?
Yeah, kind of the same thing I saw out of Sam O. We got Sam O very late in the process, the Super Bowl year back in 23, and didn't get, at that point in time in the season, things are, we're not going full tilt. It's not like we're in training camp and evaluating skill sets, but you do get to see him in an individual setting over there, and, you saw the quickness out of his stance. You saw the explosion and the twitch, and kind of similar to Teron Jackson. We got him late in the process, and but you did see the quickness and just in the meeting room, his eagerness to get back into a scheme similar to ours, and the willingness to learn, and then just seemed like a guy that just really loved football in the short period of time that we were with him late last year. So it's a guy we're kind of intrigued to see what he can do moving forward.
Kris, how much has Michael been what is advertised as him?
A lot. I mean, what we saw on college tape and all the information that we gathered in the pre-draft process, concerning him as a person. All the boxes have checked off so far. This toughness, his love for the game, the skill set that we've seen on tape, the skill set that his coaches at Georgia, explained that he had in his body. A lot of the boxes have checked so far. Now we're out there in a geared down setting in OTA football right now that you won't truly get the true assessment of it till we put the pads on in August and really start going at this at the level that kind of correlates more to Sundays. But so far, so good. We're really impressed with the kid, his love for the game, his toughness, his eagerness to learn, and then the skill set that backs all that up. So arrows pointing up on all of it.
Do you see him interacting with Nick Bosa, just kind of picking his brain?
Yeah, I mean, just in a short period of time, just his eagerness to learn and to correct mistakes very quickly and move on to the next, and pull information from Nick. He's watched Nick for an extended period of time, since Nick's been in the NFL, and he's been a guy that Michael's kind of followed, and then to get here and see Nick's willingness to, teach him on the field and teach him the small, intricate details of pass rush and leverage and taking on blocks in the run game. And he's really gravitated towards Nick a lot. And if you watch him at practice, he's always standing right behind Nick. And then, Nick knows he's watching, and he's a kid that's really eager to learn and, wants to know how and why. And so Nick, always is pulling him to the side and just maybe give him small, minute pointers on what he could maybe do a little bit better with his stance, first step, hand placement, things like that. I think it's a good match. You got an older, shouldn't even say old, you got a veteran player in Nick going on the 7th year with a rookie that's like a sponge right now and wants to learn from one of the best in the game, and it's a good matchup.
We talk about this a lot every year almost, your desire to get some of these defensive ends to rush from the inside. Does adding Bryce give you probably even more flexibility theoretically with the guys like Michael and Yetur to be in that interior rushing assignment on passing downs that you like?
Yes, it gives us even more flexibility to do that. Bryce is mainly throughout his career been an edge guy, in passing situations, so that allows you to use the versatility that you have in your room in various different ways. Bryce can also bump down as a spinner, stand-up dude, and so you can do, it allows you to have more moving parts across the front. It allows you to slide your versatile guys around, move them around, put them in different spots, locate matchup issues that from a protection standpoint or a personnel standpoint that we might can try to exploit with different guys. So yes, it does give us the ability to move guys around a little bit.
Did Georgia use Mike Kell in a way? I know it was a different system, but it seemed that they moved him around a bit. Were you able to kind of glean from that tape that he might have some success against those guards on the inside?
Yeah, it's be very difficult for a guy in college to. He's primarily played an edge position, and he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. Moving down inside, it'd be a steeper learning curve. But watching Michael in college, where he was kind of a Swiss Army knife cut. You saw him playing all the way from the 9 all the way down to the A gap, and is and excelling at all of them. You could kind of base that the learning curve wouldn't be quite as steep coming into the NFL. So yeah, just the college tape and seeing him multi-align was big for us to know that, hey, we can utilize matchups over guards, and he has a skill set outside to also get after the passer and set the edge in the run game.
You played in a deep rotation at Georgia. I think he only played like 30% of the snaps. Do you like that, or do you because he's fresh, or do you not like that because he hasn't been tested with a lot of snaps?
Well, the snaps we see on tape is what we're able to evaluate, and obviously, they at Georgia they have a lot of high-level guys there with depth, so they utilize it. So I don't consider it a bad thing or a good thing. We like to use a rotation here as long as the skill sets within the rotational players are really good. And we feel like when we stick our rotational players out there, there's not much of a drop-off. So we like to use depth here as well. So I don't necessarily look at it as a bad thing or a good thing. Georgia's obviously utilizing the talent they have on their roster and trying to keep guys fresh and hunting the ball, for 4 quarters. So you see the mindset behind it.
Kris, how much do you see the evolution of Robert Saleh since he's been here last?
Really, to me, he's a lot of the same guy. The scheme has, evolutionized a little bit, from what offenses are doing, and some of these guys coming from college into the pro game and what they do, from motion standpoints and the things that you got to do defensively to adjust to that. And so just, like I think I told somebody earlier, you're going to see it a little bit more in the back end than up front. Some of the tweaks, it's still Robert Saleh's defense. There's been small things that have been changed, and you got to keep moving with the offenses in the NFL and what they're doing and your ability to defend it, the things that they're doing. So you're going to see some tweaks in that nature. You'll see some small, minute tweaks up front, but nothing overly significant.
How much do you...
The dynamic between Nick and Michael so far, how important is it, such a new group, for Nick to kind of be that presence to set the tone for these guys and as to how things are supposed to be done?
Yeah, guys like Nick Bosa and Kevin Gibbons, who've been here the longest, both of them are going in their 7th year. I think it's instrumental that they kind of set the tone, and even the guys that have been here for a calendar year that have been, within the scheme and been here and kind of know the things, the way things are ran here, to be able to articulate that to the younger guys and articulate the standard of play that we're looking for, how we want to conduct ourselves in the meeting rooms, in the weight room, on the field, and just the manner that we want to go about doing things. I think it's very, very important.
You've recognized that?
Yes. Just watching Nick and Michael on the practice field, you see it quite a bit. Michael being a sponge and trying to ask Nick a lot of questions, and Nick pulling a young rookie to the side and giving him, small pointers on what he could do better to help him be successful.
Even before the Bryce trade happened, is that somebody that Robert talked about as a favorite player of his back in New York?
Yeah, just his whole story with Robert there in New York. Him coming in as an undrafted free agent and working his way through, and earning a spot on the 53-man roster, and really kind of still not knowing exactly what they had, to seeing him progress that next year as a pass rusher, and then ultimately in 23 really breaking out with a double-digit year, and also the success he had that year. It's hard not to root for a guy like that, going from an undrafted guy to a double-digit sacker. You're always there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes. You make the team as an undrafted free agent. You've beaten the odds, and he's a guy that beat the odds, and then really proved himself to be one of the upper echelon players as far as a pass rush perspective goes in the NFL.
Looking at last year's
you to evaluate all the defensive linemen in this year's draft, given just the depth at both of the interior and exterior?
This is one of the more deep drafts, in probably, I don't know, maybe last 7-8 years. So it's a lot of film study when you get the list, and you're coming off the season and you don't really hear a whole lot about college football, and then the guys come in and it's like, hey, this is a deep draft, and you get the list and it's 2 pages of guys, and you better be good with your time management, and you ain't got all day to evaluate one guy, so you gotta make sure you get a complete evaluation and get the film that you need to watch on a guy, and then move on to the next pretty quickly, and not a lot of downtime when you're evaluating the number of guys that we had to evaluate. From a D-line standpoint this year was a lot.
Looking at Bryce Huff's challenging last season, when you watch the film, what did you see that happened for him or didn't happen?
I still saw a good player on tape. He had a wrist injury about mid-season that I think kind of derailed his progression within being a stand-up player. But I thought he was really coming along, and I thought he's getting better within his role of being more of a stand-up outside linebacker. You could see the progression of getting better, and then I think the wrist injury kind of set him back, and it's hard when you're progressing, and then all of a sudden, you get an injury that kind of stunts that growth. But you still saw a good player on tape. You still saw a player that could win one-on-one. It's a little bit different than the hand in the ground role that he played with Robert in the Jets. So, but still a good player, and we're going to get him back to being a little bit more with what he's comfortable with putting his hand in the ground and getting off, and getting him out of a 2-point stance and back into a 3/4-point stance, and it's where he's excelled at and what he feels the most comfortable with.
I'm interested to see now that he's healthy, he's feeling good. What you've seen from him, I know it's not been pads, it's not been that physical yet, but what have you seen from him so far as you guys have been able to get together and work out?
I see Christian being Christian. And he's out there competing and working his tail off like he always does. So that's Christian. He has a standard, and he wants to be the best of the best, and that's what I see.
Is there a feeling of or a vision of confidence when it comes to, because sometimes players go through injuries, and we know that Christian McCaffrey has had his fair share of history when it comes to injuries. Does it seem like when he's out there that he's not worried about what he had to deal with last season or any seasons prior when it comes to being back out there and being confident to go through this season healthy?
Like I said, I see Christian being Christian. We don't even talk about any of that. When you have a chance, you need to talk to Christian personally, but you're going to get this. I feel he's going to tell you the same thing I'm telling you. He's ready to go, and he's ready to go and play every day.
How exciting is that, knowing that you may have him back full strength this year in the run game?
I'm definitely excited.
Last year at this time, we talked. Isaac had the 49 jersey at this time, and you said that he's trying to earn his way to a different number. He did that. One of the 2 rookies is in the 49 again this year, right? I think.
Yes, Corey. Yes.
And does he have his eyes on a number? Is that kind of an annual thing?
Well, I haven't talked to him about that yet, about getting a different number or anything like that. The main thing is I know he's happy, and his attitude is awesome, unbelievable. But he's excited, and he's happy to have that 49 and to be a 49er.
What makes Jordan a good fit? Like, what did you see in him in the draft process that led you to believe that he would be really good for this system, for this team?
Well, the bottom line is not what I saw. It's not just my opinion, and we talked earlier, about Frank, the head coach. Other people had opinions. This wasn't my opinion, just me solely, etc. But the bottom line is he's tough, because I love tough players, and guys have an ability to break tackles, and that mindset. He's got good hands. But until we put the pads on, I'm not going to dwell on anything other than that.
How about just getting to know him? I know you get to know a lot of running backs coming out of the draft every year. What kind of stood out to you in your interactions with him?
Well, their confidence. And that's the reason it's part of the job, to contact the players. To, I call it recruiting. You're recruiting them. They're trying to trust and recruiting you. Even though they don't have a say so for the most part in who's drafting them. But just his confidence, his ability, to communicate, and he knows what he's talking about. He knows, in other words, he knows football and he knows life, outside of football. But that was very impressive, and working with him daily in the meeting rooms, he wants to improve, he wants to get better, and he doesn't have a problem asking a question.
Interested to know if you had any. I mean, Isaac Bruno showed flashes last year, but were there any specifics that going into the offseason you were hoping that he was able to kind of hone in on to make a jump coming into this season?
Just in all areas, okay, improve it in the running and the knowledge of of our system. He did a good job catching the ball, but still improvements. You're just in all areas, and then that's going to make him better, which is going to make us better.
It's rare that a running back will take a knee or go down before the goal line. He did it twice last season. What did you agree with both times he did it? And then just what does that say about him as a person?
Well, you have to check with him on that. When you say that I know about him now, yes, the one I did know about, but in both situations, but you check with him why he did it. But sometimes players are thinking that they want the clock to run out. But I'm not going to get into all that. But hopefully, he grows and hopefully he puts it in the end zone this year.
What do you like about Corey Kiner?
Last one, guys.
It's toughness. His toughness, his ability to learn. He's a fit. Or in other words, scheme fit. We like that about him. His ability to compete. And just his overall toughness.
Kris was saying that Michael has basically been shadowing Nick at practice, Nick Bosa. In your group, has that been happening with Nick Martin and Fred?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's one thing about our team, that they have some guys to look up to in the shadow, in just about every position. And, but, to be able to shadow Fred and figure out, what he's eating, how he's working out, how he's getting his rest, and things he does off the field, and the pick his brain on things he does on the field is very big, and Nick has definitely been shadowed.
Was there, in your playing days, a veteran early on? Who was it?
We had a guy named John Anderson, and I had a teammate named Dave Brown that, I really shadowed, everything they did, even off the field, how they carried themselves, and, when they was away from football, how did they operate, and I got a lot of wisdom from them. And then being a player, how to study, what to look for studying. And sometimes as a young player, you don't really know what to look for. You're trying to learn your playbook, but talking to vet players, that sometimes players can understand talking to other players more than they can from coaches, because they can explain to them how they see it. Yeah, but Nick has been very good, and D. Winters and the whole group have been very, very good at learning from each other.
Johnny, you got a quick thought on Stone Blanton? He was very productive in college.
Yeah, Stone, and that's what I saw. I saw ball production in college. I saw a violent player, and I saw a player that can play multiple positions. And he's been everything we look for here. He's been having ball production, and he's getting better and better. And he takes coaching very well, and he corrects stuff the next time he's up. And so we're excited for him, and he's going to be a good asset for us.
How excited are you to have a healthy Fred Warner this season?
Yeah, always. Always excited to have Fred. But that's one thing that Fred has really been blessed with is his health. He's been very healthy. He knows how to take care of his body. And Fred always teased him that he's really getting better and better, man. The older he gets, the better he gets. But he take care of his body at a different level. Like he's ultimate warrior on taking care of his body. Like whatever it takes, he works out hard, and he eats right, he rests right, he does everything right to take care of his body.
I was thinking about his journey that first year when he was here versus, there was a lot on his plate. Yeah. Now, is there a possibility that you could see him maybe even pass rushing at this point?
Oh, yeah. No, it's no doubt that Fred is, I think that's one of the quiet part of his game that nobody knows about because he hadn't been asked to be the elite pass rusher. And I think he's probably one of the best, could be one of the best stacked pass rushers in the NFL if he was asked to pass rush.